answer is no. You're not going to rotate your crops in your backyard garden unless your backyard garden is 17 acres. You're not going to have room to rotate your crops. You want tomatoes, you want peppers, you want everything in that family. So you keep your soil alive, you keep your soil active, and forget about rotation.
I'll second agree. I think as you become this organic gardener that we're talking about, the change occurs. When there's life in the soil, then that's where it is. If you have a problem right now, a little bit of cornmeal out there will feed the beneficials, get rid of the fungal problems that are there, and you're able to use that over and over. But if you see disease persisting in there, I'd switch out of there for a while. If you like, but Judy said, we don't all have a large garden. But I think sometimes when a disease is setting itself up while you improve the soil food web, you might have to get out of there during this process. By the third year, magic happens. This is the whole thing that I've observed over the years. We can start with the poor soil like Judy was describing, and in the third year, all of a sudden, this soil is alive, it's well balanced, and the problems of disease do begin to disappear rather nicely. And with the clay soil, I forgot to add that shale, expanded shale, will open it up permanently. You will not have to ever add shale to it. I mean, it's something to open it up other than compost.
And it doesn't float like perlite.
And it doesn't float. And it's a material from here in Texas.
Related to, you brought up everybody's into vegetable gardening. If your tomato plant has early blight, is it doomed? What do you do about it?
Compost tea. Just start right off with compost tea.
Pick up the microphone. Okay. And there's, as a matter of fact, we have a question asking, what is the latest on compost tea? Anything new in the world of compost tea that any of you all would like to talk about?
Well, I don't know about the new stuff. There's a lot going on. It's one of these things that, like everything else, keeps developing and growing, and Lane Ingham, and then now everybody's doing this. So I'm sure that there's major changes in the food sources that you put into the compost tea. I've seen that happen. But yeah, back to the disease, especially blights. We don't have a single leaf in our garden, and we've got several rows of tomatoes that has a spot on it. And we started, as soon as those seedlings came up, and we planted in February this year, we dig a deep hole, put the tomato all the way down there. It's protected by the warmth of the soil. And then as it emerges, of course, we put soil around the root system. But we went through 13 degrees, or darn near that, several times, with our tomatoes already out there. Well, now they're huge, they're not stressed, and not a leaf with the disease on it at all. We've been using the aerobic compost tea, and I think that that's one of the best things to do. You either learn how to make it at home, you go to a nursery that makes it. Y'all make it every week?
Yeah. Every Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah. It's not expensive at all. The benefits are tremendous, and you can get excellent control of diseases there or on ornamentals. Wherever you use it, you'll see the benefits of it. It's dramatically improved our garden.
Folks, there's a book out there called Teeming with Microbes. The guy's name is Jeff Lowenfels. He's out of Alaska, and he's not been on as long as John. I think he's been on radio for 25 years or so. And you can get the book for like $13 from Amazon. And it's really up to date. There's a lot of the different formulas. Do you want a high fungal tea? Have you seen the book? Yeah. It's a really good little book. It's not a very expensive book. But if you just want to get a good start, and like, there's probably new things. I haven't kept up for just the last few months. I haven't had a chance to talk to Elaine or anything. But if I had to get one book right now, I would think that Elaine's is fine. But right now, Jeff's book, Teeming with Microbes, will really get you a good start on making compost tea at your house.
What's his last name?
Lowenfels. Lowenfels. And he's all over the web. It's easy to just Google him.
Okay.
Other questions on squash, stem borers. What can I do about that? And this is somebody that does love zucchini and crookneck squash, so we can't just grow the tiny little thin stem squash like the tatumi that Malcolm has made so popular and made available to so many of us. So what's y'all's thought on stem borers?
Well, what we were doing is using our floating row covers. We come through the winter, then we plant the squash, and we cover it. Of course, they're bee pollinated, so you have to open it up enough early or late in the day and work or do it yourself. And we didn't have a single squash vine borer until we had our first, our A crop and going into the B crop. The A crop is just that beautiful one that comes off first, and then some of the stresses start coming along. But this year, without covering them, we don't have any squash vine borers. And it's not the environment, I don't think the weather had anything to do with it. Once a week, maybe every 5 days, we take an insecticidal soap and we spray under the stems where the eggs might have been laid. And we seem to have managed it very, very well. I'm going to continue to do that, but not a single borer. And by now, those stems would have been split had we not been doing anything. But the row cover was a lot of work. So we tried early on. We started using the insecticidal soap, especially spraying under the plant, and we don't have a single borer.
Is that safer, John?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a couple of different insecticidal soaps out there now. What I would add to that is get out in your garden every day. Take a few minutes in the evening. I walk through, especially my squash, and I hose it all down because the squash bugs will come running up on top. And as I like to say, that's when squash becomes a verb rather than a noun. You know, you go after them like this. I think get a copy of Malcolm and Howard's book, the Texas Bug Book. There's a nice picture on the front of the new edition that has what the moth that lays the eggs looks like. It seems like I always see them in my garden a night or two before they start laying eggs. And once again, squash on the squash. And knock on wood, I have no borers this year either. I think I found 2 of the moths early. I have virtually no squash bugs, but I've sure squashed a bunch of them out in the garden. But get out and look at your plants. You'll be amazed how much the thumb and forefinger will do, and you'll be amazed at how many problems you'll solve simply by catching them before they become, major problems. Plus, it's the most relaxing part of the day to me to get out there and go along and pick and do all these things. That's just the nicest way to end the day. Question? Yes, ma'am.
I was going to ask, he talked about spraying the insecticidal soap. Do you spray it on the ground under the plant?
No, on the stems.
On the stem?
Where the
and
eggs might be laid.
Underneath the leaves?
No, the stem itself, at the base of the plant, and those, the growth, the stem coming out of there.
Okay, that's what-
Yeah, just all in that area.
We have a related question. What are the most good bug-friendly sprays that can be used in the garden? When you want to get rid of problems, but you want to be sure you're not harming your beneficials, what do y'all think are the best sprays to use?
Not really. If you've got beneficials, you don't need to spray.
Yeah.
We use
Compost tea.
Compost tea, there you go.
Yeah, compost tea is a great
Something
answer
like
too.
that.
I think garlic.
Garlic is.
Garlic's not so bad. There may be some things it does, but it's somewhat specific. And it's more of, and maybe I'm wrong here, it's more of a repellent than an insecticide.
Do you think garlic has an effect on bees? Because bees are so important for the squash and cucumber.
From what I've read, I don't know that it's bad on bees. Have you learned that, John?
Well, I've always suspected that since it's such a good repellent, I don't know that
It may repel them, but I don't think it kills them.
Malcolm knows. You have a story? What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about how to repel.
Bees and garlic.
insects. Yeah, final one, bees and garlic.
There it is.
I like to spray with compost tea, add a little extra molasses with it, and that's the closest thing to a cure-all areas. And of course, I've always heard from a child on, the best fertilizer is a farmer's footsteps. That means you're out there testing, looking at your plants, picking insects, seeing what's going on. It's really important, and that's what makes gardening fun.
Related question up here, what can you mix together? Because a lot of us spray seaweed, a lot of us spray liquid molasses, a lot of us spray compost tea. Sometimes people want to put out BT. Do you have any ground rules for what you mix or don't mix as a spray? And Stuart, you weigh in on this too because you make a lot of products and you're involved in a lot of foliar spraying of big acreage.
You can mix all those together. Yeah, seaweed, molasses, humic acid, compost teas. Compost tea, you want to get it on there while it's still pretty fresh, so maybe add it last. Right when you're going, if you're putting something to save it for a long time, molasses, humic acid, seaweed, they'll all mix good together.
One thing I might mention is it seems that we've found that putting molasses in with BT, putting molasses in with some of the products actually improves the efficiency of the product. So sometimes you want to mix. Always before, just BT was BT, but I don't know, Bob might expand on this even more than me. But sometimes mixing is a good thing. You're not doing anything that's bad. You're actually helping. It's synergistic. Maybe that's the proper term.
Well, like some of the other panelists brought up earlier,